How BBC News handled the death of the Pope. Welcome to Newswatch with me, Samira Ahmed. Coming up, should the funeral of Pope Francis have occupied so much airtime on two BBC channels at the same time? And did the news channel broadcast too many hours this week of President Trump's live addresses and speeches? One very familiar face on our TV screens is Donald Trump, and the US president has been even more ubiquitous than usual this week on the BBC, with, for example, a full 4.5-hour programme on the news channel on Tuesday evening, devoted entirely to examining his record in the White House so far.
Hello, I'm Sumi Somaskanda in Washington.
And I'm Katrina Perry. Welcome to this BBC News special coverage of President Donald Trump's first 100 days in office.
Mike Ashton acknowledged, yes, the first 100 days of a new US presidency is worthy of a special mention, but all day President Trump's 100 days has been almost the only news item on BBC News. And tonight's 4-hour binge just adds guilt to the lily of America worship. Enough, more than enough. That special on Tuesday included broadcasting 15 minutes of remarks the president made at a National Guard base in Michigan.
At ease, everybody, at ease, enjoy your...
And later, the full 65-minute address he gave at a rally near Detroit.
We actually won it 3 times. You want to really know that?
That last campaign-style speech included a number of claims which BBC News found to be false or unverifiable when fact-checked on air the following day. But at the time, the decision to cover those speeches live, and so extensively, annoyed Larry Rosen. My wife and I were disappointed when the BBC went directly to President Trump's live speech, which, as usual, was loaded with disinformation. We were disappointed that the BBC preempted its normally excellent reporting with nonsensical garbage. On Wednesday, the BBC transmitted more words directly from the mouth of the president, live and at length, in a televised meeting of his cabinet.
Sir, today, as we celebrate the 100th day, I think that it's just such a joy and an honor to continue to do this work. So thank you for that.
Let's work hard to the next 100 and have equally as much success then. Thank you.
And you've done a great job, Susie. I think everybody agrees.
Yes.
That meeting was broadcast for an hour on the news channel. There were brief interruptions for summing up by the presenter and for some analysis from a correspondent in the United States, but Jeremy Robbins still had this objection. On Wednesday, the BBC showed live the Putin-style Trump cabinet meeting. Each cabinet member read from a sycophantic script full of lies. I'd have no objection to this being covered as a news article, fact-checked with commentary, but to allow a live stream of propaganda is not the business of the BBC. Let Fox News do that. Come Thursday, and it was another day, another live broadcast of an address by the president, this time more than half an hour's worth at the White House's National Day of Prayer event. It elicited this response from Richard Hadfield. I'm concerned that BBC News has allowed itself to become a prime-time megaphone for Trump and his delusions. And Catherine Sewell added, the BBC's collective obsession with Donald Trump is leading to unbalanced news coverage. The feeding frenzy pushes out all other topics. So has the BBC spent too much airtime this week broadcasting the words of the president directly to viewers of the news channel when not all of those words were accurate? We put that charge to the powers that be, and they told us. As the President of the United States, President Trump's words and actions have huge impact across the world, as we are currently seeing with his tariffs, talks with Ukraine, and his many executive orders. Given the immediate impact of his speeches, we feel it's right to show these to viewers, so they are up to date with the latest developments. We give careful consideration to how we show these and ensure we provide viewers with the appropriate analysis, commentary, and fact-checking. Last Saturday, the eyes of the world's media were on Rome, where presidents, prime ministers, royalty and 400,000 members of the public were gathered. The funeral of Pope Francis occupied the next 4 hours on both BBC One and the news channel, and a viewer called Lisa spoke for a number of you with this compliment. I would like to express my gratitude to the BBC for their extensive and sensitive coverage of the death of Pope Francis and his funeral. The presenters and guests all spoke with great knowledge and respect. I found it to be of great comfort to me at such a sad time. There were also complaints, though, about the coverage of the funeral and of the Pope's death more widely. And to hear more about those, I'm joined by two viewers, Clive Gerard and Jeff Watson. Thank you both for coming on Newswatch. Jeff, first, you contacted us a couple of days after the Pope's death. Why?
Yeah, well, I turned on the news on, I think it was the Monday morning, when the news of the Pope's death broke. And obviously, it was the number one news item. I wasn't surprised about that at all. But my objection really is about the sheer excessive quantity of coverage that the Pope's sad death led to. Because at lunchtime, I was watching the news again, and the coverage went on for a full 15 minutes without any other news whatsoever. It was just sheer wall-to-wall Pope Francis, Pope Francis. And I do think there was a lot of other things happening in the world which we just didn't hear about.
Yeah. Is this the first time that you felt the BBC has gone overboard on one story?
Well, no. I mean, I think we can all remember the sad death of Prince Philip a few years ago, when a very similar thing happened then. But there have been, to my mind, numerous other occasions. I mean, at the moment, the local election results are dominating the news. Obviously, they're important, but it's about proportionality. You know, I really want to know what else is happening in the world, what's happening in Ukraine, in Gaza, you know, all over the world. You know, what other news is there?
And Jeff, when it came to the reporting of the death of the Pope, did it go on, in your view, beyond the Monday, the day after?
Oh, it certainly did, yeah. It was on every news item, morning, lunchtime and evening. We had correspondents at the Vatican, of course, talking about the queues to see the Pope lying in state. And I think on Wednesday, we had long live coverage of the moving of the body from wherever it was into St. Peter's, with lots of choral singing and Latin prayers and that sort of thing. You know, that was fine, but it just went on and on and on.
Thank you. Clive, you got in touch specifically about coverage of the funeral. Can you tell us what was your concern?
Well, my problem is that you do the same coverage on the BBC One and on the news channel to the exclusion of everything else. You've got two channels there. Why do you have to repeat the same thing on both of them? I like to watch the news. I watch a number of different news channels, but on that particular day, I couldn't watch anything on the BBC One because you got the Pope's funeral. I couldn't go off the news channel because you had the Pope's funeral. So I did watch other channels when I wanted to see what news was going off.
Clive, what would you have wanted to see on the news channel instead then, if the funeral had been live streamed just on BBC One?
I watch world news. I'm very interested in world news. I want to know what's going on in Ukraine. I want to know what's going on in Gaza. I want to know what's going on in Sudan. But not only those three big topics at the moment, there's plenty of other news in the world as well, which is of interest to me and possibly to other people as well. It's noticeable that Gaza has dropped off the radar somewhat lately, as has Ukraine, partly because of the Pope's funeral, I think. I mean, the coverage of his death, as Jeff was saying, was excessive.
I mean, there's two issues that you both raise, and one is about the coverage being on both channels, and the other is about how long coverage goes on for. So the BBC says, maybe this is one for you to answer first, Clive, that they showed the Pope's funeral on both channels because of the gravity of the event for so many people. What do you make of that?
Well, I don't understand it, frankly. The gravity of it, yes. The Queen died, yes. The King was coronated, yes. It's tremendous occasions, but you don't have to have two channels. You can't watch two channels at once. If you want to watch that, you can watch it on one channel. So why duplicate it?
Jeff, I saw you nodding, but also the BBC often says, when asked about the hours of coverage, they say, well, our evidence shows that audiences want breaking news. What would you say?
It was breaking news on Monday when the Pope died. Having said that, I mean, he was 88. He had just been in hospital for quite a long time with some serious illness. So it wasn't, a massive shock. And also, my other point is that probably less than 10% of the British population is Roman Catholic. And I suspect probably a much smaller proportion actually attends Mass. So how many people in the population are actually going to be fascinated by the subject of the Pope's death?
Jeff Watson, Clive Gerard, thank you both so much for coming on Newswatch.
Thank you.
Well, we did hope to discuss those points with someone from BBC News, but were told no one was available. Here's the statement they sent us instead. As head of the Catholic Church, the death of Pope Francis has huge significance for people across the world, not only for the 1.4 billion people who are Catholic. Pope Francis was respected throughout the world, as is evident by the attendance of so many leaders from around the world at his funeral. We wanted to cover the funeral in full and with the utmost respect for the Pope and for those who wished to watch the event to pay their respects. Given the gravitas of the event for so many people, the funeral was shown on BBC One as well as on the news channel as part of news coverage. We gave this careful consideration, as we will when the process to select a new Pope begins. Thank you for all your comments this week. If you want to share your opinions about what you see or hear on BBC News, on TV, radio, online and social media, email newswatch@bbc.co.uk, or you can find us on X @NewsWatchBBC. You can call us or WhatsApp us on 0370 010 6676. And do have a look at previous interviews on our website, bbc.co.uk/newswatch. That's all from us for now. Thank you for joining us. Do think about getting in touch and perhaps even coming on the programme. We'll be back to hear more of your thoughts about how the BBC covers the news next week. Goodbye.